Ready, set, go. I think that's the name of the song. It's 1, 2, 3, go, or something like that.
I love that. This theme song gets a lot of good feedback. Hopefully, this podcast today gets the same. It's June 20th, the year 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron podcast, episode 695.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
We're cranking it out.
Cranking it out. Did I catch a fiver in there? Yeah, it is it's Nashville Camp Week. Our longest standing camp. We got 40 athletes coming in town from all over the United States. Looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. We have a little bit of dinner and then a whole lot of swim, bike, and run the next 4 days. So going to be awesome. One of my favorite camps, a blast. It's such a great, not a lot of people think about Nashville as a great training ground for triathletes, but with the Trace, great pool places, Percy Warner Park, Anderson Road Beach, it is awesome. So it is a great camp. Really looking forward to that. And looking forward to today's podcast as well, which is podcast part 2 of the How to Not Suck at Cycling that we did last week. Last week was more of the technical aspect, technical meaning handling your bike, bike fits, PSI, tire choices, wheel depth, all the things that you don't like to think about because you can't put them on Strava, but it'll gain you 10 minutes, therefore beating and getting your KOM on Strava. So go back and listen to that. If you haven't listened, first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Time's very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also frequently utilize and leverage our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource. In a very overcomplicated and confusing sport, it is a solid and safe space to ask questions, get great answers, and solid feedback. So be a participant. Don't be a lurker. Be a contributing member of our awesome community in there. And we go in there, well, when we want to, when we need to get feedback and topics and questions to deliver our information to the people. And we'll do that again today by part 2 of our How to Not Suck at Cycling podcast. But that's it. No sponsors, no ads. But we do have an agenda and ask to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yep. And we're talking about cycling here today, I think. And
here today, yes, we
here
are.
today, we're talking about it. And it's just funny. I don't know if this is the same for you, but like I feel like, last year I was having a hard time. I usually have a hard time kind of getting into cycling, but once I turn the corner and really start to feel it and like it, that's when I feel like shit starts coming together.
It's your thing, man. Cycling is your thing. It's like it's my swimming, right? It's when swimming is coming into full circle and I'm fully engaged, everything else is the same. But yeah, it's
it's just, like I've been trying to ride a little bit more, getting ready for camp. Then we did the Wisconsin course last weekend, and honest to God, I've been kind of running, for the last few months, and I had my best run ever after that weekend in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I mean. I feel like it sort of brings everything together for me and kind of kicks off the running a little bit more, and even swimming. I've kind of, but it's almost like getting that one thing going that you don't really feel like getting going. It kind of gets you a little more excited about the other stuff, and I think that's always a challenge for triathletes.
Well, it sounds like you're back.
I'm getting there.
Yeah,
I think I'm a little ahead of last year too. Last year was I had to ride my mountain bike for like a month to even decide if I wanted to race.
That's right. Yeah, right. When you moved, yeah. Last year, different beast. But yeah, you're still moving. You're still moving, which won't be nearly as hard as last year, I don't think. But yeah, today, part 2 of the How to Not Suck at Cycling. I think we've actually done one of these before, so it's not technically part 2.
We've got about 6 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So this might be part 8. I have to look it up.
It probably is, but like part 2 of the one we started last week. Yeah, because I mean, we've got close to 700 podcasts. I know we've done a How to Not Suck at Cycling. So go back and listen to that one. We cover, I'm sure, a lot of the things that we'll cover today. But last Thursday, we covered, again, the technical aspects, things you can gear, tires, bike fit, the things you can still get, what I consider not free speed, because you got to spend money, but in terms of energy, right, and stress, there's things you can do to reduce stress and not add stress, right? We always talk about stress and adding workouts, and the physiological parts of cycling and training we'll discuss today. As a coach, when you talk about how to not suck at cycling, one of the first things that I tell athletes is, one, it's going to take a while. And that's not something you might want to hear, but of all the sports that the 3 sports like swimming, cycling, running with athletes, more athletes, it takes them longer to get really, really good cycling fitness than it does running and riding. Obviously swimming and running. Obviously it's very dependent on the, your experience level. Swimming is one that it can take a while, but swimming is also one where it's swimming and running, the 2 technique based sessions, right? The 2 technique-based sports. Swimming obviously being the headliner. You can change one thing in your technique and gain 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds per 100, right? Free speed, no stress, actually less stress, faster splits. Running, a better running economy, right? Most people have been, active, so they can run. You'll see good speed from that, or good improvements. Cycling, different animal, right? It's one of those things where you can't change your technique, right? Most people, or very few people I know, have to change their cycling technique, right? Because it's your foot clips in, it's on a fixed platform, you spin it in a circle. Easy enough, right? Now, there are things, right, that you can do to become a better cyclist faster. One of the first things is to ride a lot. That's number one. Most athletes, again, I think they ride 2, maybe 3 times a week. Obviously, finding time to ride is a big one because it's the most time consuming, right? An hour and a half ride is most athletes' 30, 45-minute run, right? From a stress standpoint, from how they program things. It also comes with the most equipment, right? You got to pump up your tires, you got to leave the house, or you got to hop on the trainer, you got to calibrate, you got to upload this, you got to get your software going, you got to make sure things are ready to go, you got your bottles ready. It is the most time consuming from that aspect, right? Swimming from a travel standpoint, it is, but doing more hours is always, not always, but is most frequently the best way to go to start off with. And not even thinking about hours, not even thinking about the stress you're accumulating, not even thinking about what intensity I am doing, but loving to ride your bike is always step one, right? Riding it easy, ride as much as you can. And riding easy, I mean, ride it easy. So a lot of athletes, and we've even had a question on this in Facebook, in our closed group about, polarized training, which is, doing all your stuff very, very easy, and then your other stuff kind of hard. Nothing in the middle, not a lot of tempo work, not a lot of efforts. What I found as a coach, especially the last, 2-3 years, and again, the advice we'll give today, and I'll try to kind of go back and forth with, and I'll try not to be, I'll try, and you'll rein me in. I'll try not to dive too deep on like the real in-depth scientific approach that you take to cycling, depending on the goals you have, the time of the year, and your focus at a speed or distance, because it is very relative, right? If you're just training for, I don't mean just because it's less, I mean, if you're specifically training just for a sprint and an Olympic, your training will look, from an intensity distribution level, very different than an athlete looking to do just long course racing for the year, right? But those mostly only will look different during your last 12, 16 weeks leading into the event, because there are specific times of the year, if you're doing 70.3s or fulls, where you'll need to train like you're doing a sprint, like you're doing an Olympic. Like, the 2 biggest stars in triathlon the last 2 years, outside of Lionel Sanders, the YouTuber, has been Gustav Eden and Christian Blumenfeld, right? They went from, I think Christian, he obviously won the gold medal in the Olympics, and I think Gustav was 8th or 9th that day, and then they jumped right into Ironman distance training. They want to see if they could do it back to back, right? So they jumped from probably what is a high VO2 max, high intensity interval training style of training, with obviously still plenty of volume, and then went right into long course, which is the easiest way to go, right? Is the easiest bridge of the gap, is to do a lot of VO2 work than what they probably did going into their buildups for the 70.3 Worlds and the Kona and St. George and all those long course races. Was they went from trying to raise their VO2 max and be very, 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 very quick, very, very, very fast, getting to up to speed very, very quick, really, really maximizing their glycolytic systems, to now moving into long course racing, which is about fat oxidation, which is about lowering your VLA max, which is the rate in which you produce lactate. It is two different things, but the way it worked out perfectly for them in that scenario and how you would train that is it also looks very, although their cycle was on like a 3-year cycle, 4-year cycle, it's also how a long course race calendar would look over 12 months. You build up your VO2 max, and then your goal is to lower your VLA max going into race day, because obviously what you want as a long course racer is a low lactate production rate, but also you want to maximize your fat oxidation, right? Because you want to rely mostly on fat. So that dictates also the way you train, right? So when it comes to, again, sprints and Olympics, what you want to focus on as an athlete, as a cyclist, as an all-around triathlete is, first things first, volume is your friend, right? Easing riding is always good. Even 30, 45 minutes, just getting that neuromuscular pattern down to where it's frequent, whether it's almost thoughtless, it just comes as repetition. A lot of athletes got into triathlon from just spinning, right? Going to spin class, riding their bikes. They'll really generate a lot of power from the 12 to 6, right? If you're talking about, hands on the clock, they'll really, really smash down on the gears, and then they have no pull the back, right? They never engage their calves, never engage their hamstrings and their glutes. They're only generating power and getting that backstroke up, right? Up to the 12, back up to 12, 7 to 12, because they're mashing down on the front part of the other one, right? So ride it a lot, right? Especially if you're a newer cyclist, two great things to do. And then I'm kind of moving to the more technical, maybe deep dive areas when it comes to intensity distribution and what you're trying to focus on here in a minute, but especially as a newer cyclist, right? So new cyclists, and I mean new cyclists as in you're just starting out, or, right, cyclists who have been, or triathletes that have been away from the sport for a period of time. The fact that you used to road race 12 years ago doesn't count, right? The fact that you did, the bike across, the plains in 2012 doesn't count, right? You still need to remind your body what it needs to do. And then also for athletes who are in between seasons or have a long way to go between the race they just did and the one they have in their future. So we kind of refer to it as like the skill phase. So skill phase meaning how efficient you do something. So especially for cycling, you're talking about raising your anaerobic ceiling. You're also talking about just doing pedal strokes well, right? Neuromuscular patterns, right? You're talking about doing a lot of higher cadence work, 90, 95, 100, 105, 102, spinning really fast, engaging everything, but also big gear work is great, right? Big gear work meaning 50 to 60 to 70 for most athletes as they kind of get started. 70 cadence might seem big gear for athletes. 70 might seem like high cadence for some. And then slowly working around. So what you're really doing is maximizing the full pedal stroke, right? By going way, way high over your cadence. If your average cadence in a race or your race cadence is 80, working at a cadence of 100, 105 will make your 80 feel easier and be easier and more economical. Same goes for lower cadence and big gear work. You're not only making sure you're engaging your fast twitch muscles without doing the fast twitch work, right? Like higher intensity where your heart rate goes up, but you're still engaging them through torque. Do those as well. Well, also making your 80 race cadence a lot easier. That is the best way to start. Again, not just for an athlete, coming into the sport after a long layoff or just in general after obviously just riding a bike and accumulating hours, but creating those neuromuscular pathways, reminding yourself how to ride the bike. And then again, going back in the off season, it's a great time. And then just from a skill and an economy phase, building into your next race. We have our athletes do this, just kind of go through blocks and phases. Even after they just do a race, I'll kind of throw in some of these just to make sure we're not getting lazy, because you do forget. You do, if you do the same cadence all the time, you could drop at 10 and it feels like you're dropping at 30. Right? But the more you do something, the easier it feels. That's also a good and a bad thing. The more you ride 80 cadence, the easier it is, but the harder
it is to break.
Everything else becomes. Yeah. So it's a great way to again remind things and also to keep it fun, right? Because those should be Zone 2, zone 3, maybe, unless you're moving into a different phase from big gear work. But it's a great way to kind of keep you engaged on your ride, whether you're inside or outside. Those are great things to do. Mountain biking is a great thing if you want to be outside. It's like the best possible thing to do in that phase, because you're working on handling, right, which we talked a lot about last week. But then 2, you are rarely ever riding your mountain bike steady zone 2 with same cadence. You're doing 100 or you're doing 30. You're going fast, you're going slow, right? You have to teach those muscles how to engage, not slowly, but quickly. Because if you don't, you're going to miss a turn, you're going to hit a root, or you're going to fall over. So again, get out on your mountain bike, find some single track. That is an outstanding. That's why you see a lot of the professional athletes, when they go to the off season, they go straight to the mountain bike, because it's fun, you're gaining fitness, and it's just what you need for that time of year from a stimulus standpoint.
Yeah. And it really does kind of connect your muscles to your brain. Like, cause there's a lot of times when you got no choice, but you got to keep going. You know, it's one of those things where I've always done it. And, the workouts are just, like you said, I mean, it's just all over the board. So I think it's just a generally good way to practice and ride cycling. But I love that you said about, you know, kind of keeping it fun, because that's usually where I'm at this time, is like, man, it's hard for me, a little behind the 8 ball, but getting back into cycling and stuff like that. And one of the things that I've really been concentrating on, because I think it's kind of my flaw in training, is kind of riding easy. I think I've typically been the person that's really gone out and just really kind of hammered a lot and whatever, but I'm really starting to see the appreciation for, you know, the zone 2 kind of upper zone 2 maintenance kind of a thing. And it's really made it more enjoyable for me, because I'm not gassed, but I'm starting to feel stronger and stronger. And I think for me, the endurance and the long stuff is my weakness. So I have to work on that. And it just hasn't been as hard, but it's a different type of hard for me. You know, I usually find that even in running sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of people are like this, where it's just very difficult to kind of chill and enjoy that, because you get impatient or whatever. And then also sometimes it feels a little easier to go faster. So I'm really just kind of in this thing about, and I mentioned it last podcast, but when you're out kind of working on your cornering and stuff like that, there's a real big advantage to slowing things down and kind of connecting, like you're saying, the pedal stroke, and getting your hamstrings and your back of your leg involved in the pull up, and really connecting that whole stroke with a really good balance. I think it's hard for a lot of people to kind of do that. I think I actually probably pull more than I should sometimes, because of maybe the mountain biking history. I have a tendency to really get aggressive with my pull, and I think I'm beating myself. So I have to almost force myself to be a little more powerful on the push. It's pretty, it's an interesting thing, but I like the balance of just kind of cruising along in zone 2 is something that's a really good neuromuscular kind of practice that really does keep your pedal stroke connected all the way through. And I don't know, I love that too, man. That's just kind of how I am. I'm high cadence, low cadence, back it around. And I always think that's the best way to learn how to cycle, is to put yourself in weird positions and kind of have to deal with it and make it a little uncomfortable, and then back it off and settle back in, because it's kind of like climbing a hill, getting over it, and then you can kind of regroup.
One of the things, and the reason I love doing like those kind of we call drills and skills, is that I think people don't consider cyclists as like athletes, right? You hop on your bike and you pedal hard to go faster. Yeah, somewhat true. But again, and we talked about this last podcast, and you talked about a second ago, is you have to be an athlete and move like an athlete and think, and then most importantly, react like an athlete to be a really, really good cyclist, right? To make a move, to know when to gear change. You're always having to think. It's not as easy as it sounds inside. So doing these kind of, we have like one of my favorite workouts that we'll give is like fast twitch, big gear twitch workouts, like where you're doing 100, 110 cadence, like super easy, right? The effort level is the same. It's not zone 4. It's still zone 2, zone 3. The only thing that feels zone 4 are your legs. They're spinning so fast. And then after a minute of that, you go slam right into big gear, 50, 55, 60 cadence, depending on the athlete, has lots of torque. forcing your legs to make these quick changes, becoming more athletic, not becoming more stagnant and stale and predictable, becoming more athletic. Like, and that, again, that's just a huge thing. People think, again, riding a bike is easy, and it can be, especially inside when you can, make your trainer do it all for you. You don't have to change gears. You don't have to know how to change power. You just do it. But out in the real world, you've got to learn how to be an athlete with your bike and on your bike and with your legs. Again, not just with your decision making, but with your legs. First things first, do that. Focus on that. Become an athlete. Because then it also makes the next thing is you want to do with your cycling and your training more beneficial, right? Because think about, swimming economy and running economy. The better your economy, the easier it is, right? The easier it is to go to a certain effort and to produce a certain amount of power or pace, right? Same thing goes for cycling. If you have maximized your pedal stroke, right? Your efficiency to be an athlete when you do it, right? Then when you start to do bigger, harder work, it's easier because your 360 degree pedal stroke is now 360 degrees, right? And it's evenly or somewhat evenly distributed. It's not 240 degrees of effort. And then your other leg is trying to compensate by making up for it, which it can't fully do, while also maximizing its own pedal stroke. So next thing you can do, going back to what I was talking about with Gustav and Christian Bluefin, you're seeing this year, right? As they have admittedly, I think, struggled with coming down from the long course racing to now going fast again, going really fast. I mean, like they will at short course, like they need, because the needs are different, right? Again, short course sprints and Olympics, you want to have like a really, really, really high VO2 max. And honestly, you want to have a really, really high VLA max. Again, VO2 max is like your maximum aerobic capacity, your aerobic ceiling. We call it like the top, like building your cake and stacking as high as you can. I like to refer to it as like your aerobic ceiling, how hard and high you can go. And then obviously the other one, the VLA max, is the rate in which you produce lactate, which is you don't want to produce a lot of lactate as an endurance cycle. So again, two different focuses, but again, far away from a race, you don't want to just focus away from your VO2 max VO2 max meaning going at, again, if you've even done your zones correctly, I could make a whole podcast about that, is doing, a VO2 max for an appropriately found and calculated max, right, is about 105 to 106% of that max and over to about 120. So it's really, really, really hard efforts that you're only going to be doing for, 2, 3, 4, 6, max, like usually max like six minutes on intervals of a lot of rest, like 4 minutes. You're really, really raising your VO2 max, really raising your aerobic ceiling here. But what you're also doing, right, is raising your VLA max, which you don't want to do. But it's always a puzzle, right? A little bit of a give and take when you think about how to prioritize these things within your calendar, right? How you want to do your training, how you want to build up to your race. So you want to build it up first, but then what you're also making your body more apt to do and training it to do is to use your glycolytic system, which means when it comes to opening door number 1, which is using glycogen to fuel and burn energy and create your speed, or open the door to fat and use that as the mode to take energy and turn it into speed. That's all it is, right? That's all we do as athletes. We take energy and we turn it into speed. That's it. But the kind of the crux and the kind of the tension point between those two is, where do you want to get it from? Obviously, if you're doing shorter stuff, you want it to come from your glycogen because it's readily available. It's almost instantaneous, right? You have to respond quickly. If you look at like Tour de France riders, like that's coming up in a few weeks, is the sprinters, the ones who are really going to aim for, the sprints at the end of these, stages, they want a high VO2 max and a high VLA max, because when it comes to the last, 100 meters, they're not going to be like, man, I really hope I can tap into my fat stores here. No, they are totally wanting to engage their glycolysis and get quick glycogen. Boom, done. It's over quickly. In long course racing, you don't want that, right? Especially as a triathlete, because you want your body to tap into its fat stores. You have so many more calories to choose from, no matter what your height, weight, and body fat percentage is. You're always going to carry around more fat than you will glycogen stores. You want to tap into those first, not just because you have more of them, but it's really, really hard, right? Because when you think about glycogen, you only have a certain number on board, right? And as on your bike, you want to just kind of top it off, right? I was kind of use the example, I used this the other day on a Zoom call with an athlete going over some of their test results was, you leave the gas station and you got like the line is like a little bit above F, right? It's like, a couple millimeters above F. Well, you want to get off the bike with your gauge basically coming to F. So you want to ride the whole ride, if you can, burning straight fat and just topping off your glycogen stores. Think about this. Think if you start, I got to wrap it up here because we're not going to go short today. Think about how often people overswim and engage their glycolytic system because they're going over, zone 2 for them. So they're swimming their race at zone 3. They're immediately burning through glycogen. And then they go on the bike and they're over bike and they haven't trained. They've done way too much hard work. They're hard all the time. So all they do is burning through glycogen. And they wonder why their run sucks. It's because from the time you took a stroke in the water, you've been burning through your glycogen reserves, which are less than 1,000 calories for most people that are going to be able to tap into for the course of the day. What you want to do is fat. When you get the run, open up the faucet, let the glycogen flow. Because that's what you want to have, and when you want to use it is on the run. But there are ways to train that, right? Again, if you want to train raise your VO2 max, be a very fast responder, you're doing super sprints, Olympics, VO2 max work, like again, make sure you test, and then very, 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 very easy work when you're not doing it, right? So you want to raise that. So again, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minute intervals, work your way up to doing 4, 5, maybe even 6. That's a lot. After that, and if your goal is to lower, right, or not to lower your VO2 max, but to now concentrate solely on creating a really efficient, right? We talk about efficiency a lot and economy a lot when it comes to long course racing. Now the focus is more along the lines of threshold work, tempo work, and how can I lower my VLA max, which means obviously lowering the rate in which you produce lactate, which is a good thing, because one of the things people don't understand about lactate is that once you start to produce it, it doesn't just dissipate on your own. So going back to glycogen, what you have as an athlete, and you have a certain number of certain amount of glycogen stored when you start a race, is when you start to produce lactate and you go over, right, your MLSS, which is your maximum lactate steady state, which is also the rate in which you are combusting lactate and creating it. So if your MLSS is 260, then right at 260, you're kind of like 50% on both sides. You're creating lactic acid at a rate that you're also able to dissipate it. So it's even. But anything over that, your body can't combust it at its normal rate. So now you're having to dip into your glycogen stores to deplete it. So your energy reserves, right, that are supposed to be saved to create speed, to produce velocity, to make you go faster, is now being, instead of being used in that container for speed, has now been shifted over, right, to a box that is now using glycogen to combust lactate. Because so you went too hard, too fast for too long, whether it was going up a hill, whether it was standing out of the saddle, whether it was to pass a group, whether it was to stay with the group, right? And you did it for too long. Now you are dipping way into your energy reserves, not even for helping you move faster, but to help combust the lactate you just created. So in order to do that, right, you have to find the exact, not amount, but the exact number, right, in which you produce, and you produce lactic acid and combust it to your MLS, that's your maximum lactate steady state, which is not your FTP, or your FTP is what you think you can hold for an hour, but what you don't know about that is, where is that coming from? Is that coming mostly from my really, really high VO2 max because I'm a really big Olympic style athlete, or is it coming from my aerobic system? You have no idea where the number's coming from. But then ways to train that is obviously doing work along those lines of what I would consider like zone 3 work, long intervals, right? You're training your body. You're not going too high, right? Because you don't want to start dipping into your glycogen. So you want to train your body to, again, burn fat, go for long periods of time at high intensity, but not too high, right? So we're looking at phases. You're looking at becoming in a better cycle. How to not suck at it. You go from the skill work, and you're building your VO2 max, right? Building that big aerobic engine, building that ceiling, and then you move it to what I would consider more of your, quote unquote, specific and endurance phase, which is all about strength, right? You can do that with big gear work. You can do big gear work at threshold, which is it's something that we do a ton of, very underrated, very good for you. Because again, it doesn't get your heart rate up, but what you also don't want to lose when you go into this phase of focus is just because you're not doing high intensity all out interval work like sprinting, you don't want to lose your fast twitch muscles and fibers ability to engage and be active. So big gear work at torque, right? We're talking like as low as 40, 45, 50 for athletes who have progressed that way. Doing big gear work at threshold still actively recruits those, but you're not doing VO2 max type work. So you're actually getting the same benefit of doing it, but what you're not doing is engaging the system you don't want to, right? And then the closer you get to race day, again, for 70.3s and fulls, then you're looking at longer, steady state, zone 3, at around 80, 85%, just really, really, really long. And again, race specific type of work, right? Long intervals, they're not all out because, again, and we'll close it out here in a second, is like when you think about going hard, right, and intensity distribution, is you can hop on the bike on a Tuesday, right, and go 15 minutes all out, as fast as you can hardly go on a Zwift race or a ride with your buddies or whatever it is, and you'll get 15 minutes of intensity, and you went at like 110, 120% for that time, and then you're going to need, that's all you got for the week. So you got 15 minutes, right? More than likely utilizing the system you didn't want to, especially if you're doing 70.3s or fulls. Or you could spread that out into 2 workouts of the week, get 20 minutes in each session done, not be destroyed, not be shelled, and still be able to do more. So you got 40 minutes versus 15, 40 minutes of intensity versus 14 or 15. Which one do you think is going to add up better over the course of 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks? You're gonna be outnumbering that by hundreds of minutes. And then the best part is you're not going to feel destroyed, right? After you do it, you're not going to be just totally wiped. You're going to do it again. I'm going to wrap it up there because that's a great way to periodize things, is to go through that. Like you could have moved and come back and I wouldn't be done yet. but it's a great way, because then after you get done with your, longer course, and you move back down and do this again, which is crucial. It's important, but it's also hard to go from short. Again, that's why athletes who strictly focus just on long course have a really time going fast. Not because they don't do quote unquote speed work, is that you've never spent a significant time, right, raising your VO2 max, doing these kinds of things, or doing the right things to keep them engaged. So that, again, we talk technically a lot. We talk about data a lot, or not a lot, but frequently. Cycling is one of those things where, again, I could do a whole other podcast about this, but, finding the right zones, making sure they come from the right places, knowing what your FTP really is, right? Not why that is that number, but how you got to that number. And that's really the only true way you can now measure and then attack the way that you want to train, by knowing those. Because most people are just like throwing a dart at a board, right? They overestimate their FTP by the test they did, how they did it, when they did it. They use the inappropriate calculation. Even then, they don't know where it came from. They just knew that it's 260. So they don't even know what system to work now to become better. That's why most athletes, again, I'll wrap it up here, proper cycling and knowing your zones and doing the right type is not just great for cycling. It's the best thing you can do if you're running. Because again, everyone blames the run because it's last. Mm-hmm. And it's where you can absolutely and 100% purge the most amount of time. But what oftentimes happen is, like I went back, maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, is most people come because, again, no one wants to do easy stuff. It's not flashy, right? I just want to burn and win races and go hard and hammer it out and beat yesterday. That's fine and all if you want to work that specific system and be great at it. But your system doesn't become smaller. Your other system become inefficient when it comes to fat oxidation. And then especially with triathletes, when you don't swim enough, okay, and you hop in the water, you're immediately burning through glycogen. You're hopping on the bike instead of hopping on the bike still at above F, you're now at a 3/4 of a tank. And then you're probably either over biking, or your body is still trained to just dip into its glycogen instead of fat. So It's burning through glycogen. So then you get off the bike, and instead of hopping off the bike at an F, right, full tank, glycogen race, turn that faucet, burn rubber, baby, you are at a fourth of a tank. And there is no way to run fast and replenish the glycogen you're burning with what you can consume while running. So much easier to consume while riding than it is while running. That's why you want to hop off with the best, with the biggest tank. So you hop off with a fourth of tank, and by mile 3 or 4, you've quote unquote bonked. Okay, you did it to yourself. That's how you trained yourself. That's how you trained your body with not enough swimming, the wrong type of cycling, and now you're here, right? But again, you blame it on that. I just didn't have it. I was cramping. Well, I mean, again, you trained your body to fuel itself off of a very small gallon tank, right? That's it. When you could have trained it to live off and work off and race off a tanker truck. But it's about how you train, the way you do it, and then how you work that into the schedule to make yourself not just a good cyclist, but how to not suck at cycling.
Yay. I think I got it, man.
You got it? Stuck
with it. Yeah. That's why I love riding when we're going to be in Nashville on the trace, because, I mean, for me, like to relatively kind of keep all that stuff a little more simple for me, especially outside, is just, I've just always had this thing about I ride up hills a little harder than I would in a race, and then I kind of settle back in and find a nice, comfortable zone till the next one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's kind of what you're saying in a way.
Grind it out, big gear, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I've thought about going through like an entire training cycle of just doing big gear work and seeing it and trying to see what happens.
Maybe I'll do that.
Maybe do that, just big gear all the way.
Pig.
Big gear all the way. We hope we brought things full circle for you today. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and there's a one-stop shop for all things coaching camps and community. If you want more information on how to support us, you can go to the online store, purchase some gear, purchase some swag, take the load off Mike and his movers, and lighten the load on his U-Haul as he moves. And also, it's a great way to support us. You can also click on the coaching tab and look through our coaches to find the one that's right for you. If you're looking for help for your race for the rest of the year, or even the next year. Look through our roster of coaches and find the one that is right for you. As always, if you need anything for Mike, he is available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. I enjoyed it. Nice little run.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Good.
See you.